And we are live. As always, there are many ways to support these programs, these videos. If you'd like, you may join the YouTube channel directly. You may go to Aksum, excuse me, yeah, go to Aksum. Well, a little dangerous right now. You may go to patreon.com/Aksum. And probably my favorite thing going forward will be to just get you to subscribe to the Substack. Obviously, there's a non-paid version and a paid version. The paid version is better than the non-paid version, but any sort of subscription to the newsletter so I can infect you with my ideas, that's okay for me. And maybe you share it with someone who does eventually pay. So, and the idea spreading is the most important thing. I'm here today to review the film RRR. This is an Indian film. It's funny, the word for Indian in Amarinya is just Hind, which is, it's tough, because it's like saying a Hindi person. I was talking about how it was weird because we were visited by a sister from the Indian Orthodox Church at our Ethiopian church this weekend, and it's like in Amharic to refer to them as Hindi, but they're not Hindi. They're from Kerala. They speak Malalai. I'm butchering that language. Their base liturgy is in Syriac, and they are in communion with us. So anyway, I don't know the religion of these people, but it is a Telugu language, which is one of the southern Indian languages in the Dravidian ethno-linguistic category of languages. And so there's this weird thing that goes on where a lot of the film is dubbed in Hindi and some of the film is dubbed in English. So seeing an Indian language be dubbed over by another Indian language is a weird thing. Growing up not being allergic to foreign films and manga, comics, so many things from Japan and from Europe and from other places, Latin America, I had no issue reading subtitles, even ones made by fans and not professionals, amateurs. So I always preferred sub to dub because the sub, and I'm not alone from what I could tell in online culture, the sub allows you to see the natural movements of the people's mouths. So there's something funny about this movie where the movements of their mouth are a little unnatural because it's dubbed over in another language. And it took me a while to figure out what was going on because I didn't expect an Indian language to be dubbing over another Indian language. That's a negative thing. This is a movie very loosely based on two historical figures, one Alluri Sitarama Raju and another Komaram Bhim. So Alluri Sitarama Raju and Komaram Bhim, they were both Indian revolutionaries, and they kind of did their own things in the wilderness. One was from a rural area, but more accustomed to the city, and one was a very extremely tribal man. And the extremely tribal man only left his tribe because they had someone from their tribe stolen from them by the British Raj and the family of the British Raj, because they, kind of in the film, at least, I don't know what the situation was like in colonial India, but in the fictionalized account, they sort of treat these people like property. The main governor or the Raj is so much in this that a big part of the theme of the movie is how he considers, and maybe this is based on a real thing, I don't know, but he considers the bullets that are made by British people and imported to India to have each more value than the life of any Indian. So when he ever needs to punish the Indians and maybe, to death or not, he says to his soldiers to not waste bullets on them, but to use like tree branches, crowbars, whatever is around in order to get the job done while maximizing, profits or saving money or whatever it is in terms of cruel judgment of efficiency. And so the two figures in the film, one begins, spoiler alert, one begins as a police officer and one begins as this returner of blood, this vengeance getter, this avenger. And they're kind of fated to have a meeting because the one is working for the colonial government and the one is trying to take down the colonial government, or at least commit an illegal act of re-kidnapping his kinswoman, his sister, from his tribe to get her back, which would put him at odds with the colonial authorities. And these are the spoilers. They eventually end up teaming up because the British Raj employee that was the Indian was actually this revolutionary in disguise and was like deep undercover and was like more loyal than even the British soldiers in beating the crap out of the Indians, even when they were rebelling and other things. So it brings up the classic question that the black feminist Audre Lorde would ask: can you use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house? Which is a question, of course, that they've asked on the Red Scare podcast as well. I know they must have read Audre Lorde, those New York ex-socialists who are flirting with the right. Anyway, this movie asks whether you can make systemic change while in the system of British colonialism in India, and then you could extrapolate it to whatever system that you are involved in, or if you must make that change as a vigilante outside of the system. And if you can make that change within the system, at what point do you stop working within the system and then switch to working outside of the system? Or can you do it while working through the system the entire time? Or go back. You must work in the system for a little bit until the point in which you are no longer going to work with the system. And so this movie plays with that idea. Another idea I see is, in general, you can say the Indo-European, Indo-Aryan, whatever you want to call it, culture is hyper individualistic. The African culture and the East Asian culture are very communal. India is this very interesting crossroads, and it kind of has a north-south split, but it's not always perfectly that way. And we're speaking in generalities and in tendencies and proclivities, not in a fact in every single situation, in every time, in every place. You still have to be contextual and case by case. So it has this interesting thing where the tribesman, who's the avenger, he comes from a very communal environment, and in that environment, community is everything, and he has no will to leave the community except when all options have been exhausted. And so only in the event that all options have been exhausted do they send a tribal avenger and to go do his task, and boy does he do it well. The other revolutionary kind of represents, and so that's an example of a community that has communalism, but that's the rule. The exception to the rule is they send out an individual to be hyper individualistic. The other side of that coin is the more individualistic part of the culture, and India is interesting because it has both of these like swirling in their culture. You can call it a contradiction or a tension, something that they may have to grapple with as a society as they try to become a great power in the 21st century. And I think Ethiopians could think about this as well, although we also have a north-south dynamic. Again, that dynamic is not perfect, and it's definitely more widespread than that. We have this strain of individualism and the strain of communalism that the geographer, although he was many more things than that, the person incarcerated by three different regimes, the absolute monarchist, the communist, and the federal Democrats, Professor Masfin Waldemariam, he would often comment that the Ethiopians are so great at running, and we won a lot of running events over the past couple weeks in Oregon. You can go check out all the championships won by Ethiopians, and there are a ton of those. So 10,000 meters, 5,000 meters, marathon, you know what it is. So he said we're so good at running and not soccer because although there's a team element to running, ultimately it's an individual sport, whereas soccer takes a lot of coordination. And there's this weird thing where nobody wants to be a pioneer in Ethiopian society, but once you see someone who's a pioneer, then and only then, and once his pioneership is secured and the legacy is secured, do you appreciate that person. That's how you can get Zaman Masafant, or the era of judges, the era of princes, where you have warlords all over the place and regionalism for 70 years, and nobody wants to have one united country. Then Emperor Theodore, or as Theodoros, comes and beats the shit out of everybody and makes it one united country. And only after the fact, with the bird's eye view, do people appreciate the gall of that individualism. So going back to the film, the second revolutionary comes from a more individualistic culture where everyone has a gun and everyone not it's not like the community sends one person who's the exception to the rule. It's that every person in that community is to be a rifleman, and every person in that community takes some sort of revolutionary responsibility. At the same time, that individualistic sub community within the Indian communities has a representative who, though that person is hyper individualistic, they have a communal goal of freeing and liberating their tribe as well as all of India from British rule. And that's why he goes deep undercover and does things that he finds abominable with this super long term goal in mind. So anyway, these two revolutionaries, the fictional part of this film is what if they met? What would that look like? And so they have this seemingly fated, inevitable clash, but then they join forces and they go after the British Raj and the British Empire in India. And so that's the film. I find it fascinating. I haven't seen any super chats or any super stickers, any questions, comments, or concerns. I'll open it up to that now. If there are nothing within the next 30 seconds to a minute, we'll keep this video short because I am able to ramble when invited to. So that's it for my review of the film RRR. Like I said, it's a Tagalog, so Dravidian language Indian film that was unique. A lot of the ones I've seen are in Hindi or in English or some combination, although it's also in English. It's dubbed over in Hindi and it's dubbed, which has subtitles. But then, so it's a dub sub combo. I didn't mention that earlier. I kind of just said it was dubbed, but it's dubbed and then subbed. And then it also has some English in it that doesn't have subtitles, which is good for the English speaking audience. It's visually the most stunning film. I saw a wrestling film that I should review recently too that's Indian called Dangal. I would say they're a little bit comparable, but this one was by far the best. Dangal was great too, and I'll tell you about it another day. But RRR was the greatest Indian film I've ever seen, and it was epic, like gun action, physical combat, animals. A lot of animals were used. I love the various Worms series video games, and my close friends know that there are a lot of little awards and trophies they give you at the end. But I love using this thing called the Super Sheep. And so I get this award all the time, which is hilarious, which says most animals used. And I'll say this film, to close out, has probably the worthiness to receive the word most animals used. Adam, how good are Bollywood movies anyway? I won't speak on behalf of all Bollywood movies, but it seems like in general the quality is getting better and better. And I would say this film, RRR, and another one I haven't reviewed yet called Dangal, which is about a young girl who becomes a wrestling champion or tries to become a wrestling champion. Let you check that out. Those are two really great Bollywood films that I've seen recently. So check out RRR. I think it's on Netflix. I don't remember who I watched it, probably Netflix, but I don't know where it is. But find it, RRR film, and it's an epic battle of two revolutionary Indians. It's in a Dravidian language as its base called Tagalog. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's against the British Raj and the British Empire. Very interesting, very powerful, a lot of epicness inside. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No, thank you for your time.